Hello there, you perfectly lovely little people. My name is Sarah. I'm reading from 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith, and I'm finishing off this long chapter called Christmas Eve. The baker's shop would not have been nearly big enough to house all the pups, but luckily there was a large bakehouse at the back, and soon every pup was safely in and enjoying a splendid sausage roll. Pongo and Mrs. chatted to the collie while they ate. He shook his head worriedly when he heard about the gypsies. A narrow escape, he said. The trouble is that Dalmatians are such noticeable dogs. 99 of you together are spectacular, and though I mean it as a compliment, you'd be so much safer if you were black. Like that little pup over there, said Mrs. What pup? The collie looked across the bakehouse, then said sharply, That pup doesn't belong in this village. Who are you, my lad? Where have you come from? The black pup did not answer. Instead, he came running to Mrs. and butted her in the stomach. Here, hold hard, young man, said Mrs. Then she gasped. Goodness, is it? It isn't. It is. It's roly-poly. The fat puppy, who was always getting into mischief, had found his way into a shed at the back of the sweep's house and had a fight with a bag of soot. Mercy, you will need some washing, said his mother. Then it was that one of the keenest brains in dogdom had one of its brainiest waves. Roly-poly, said Pongo, was there a lot of soot at the sweeps? Bags and bags, said Roly-poly. Then we are all going to be black dogs, said Pongo. Your husband is a genius, said the collie to Mrs. as he showed them all into the sweep's shed. There was any amount of soot, waiting to have done with it whatever sweeps do with soot. 10 dogs forward at a time, commanded Pongo. Pups roll, pups rub noses. In a very short time there were 97 pitch-black pups. And now, my love, said Pongo to Mrs., let us take a roll in the soot. Frankly, Mrs. did not fancy it. She hated soiling her gleaming white hair and losing its smart contrast with her beautiful black spots. But when Pongo had helped her with the final touches, he said, Why, Mrs., as a black dog, you're slimmer than ever. You're positively svelte. And she felt much better. Then Pongo said, How does soot suit me? Soot suits you beautifully, said Mrs., and all the pups roared with laughter. Then they all went back to the bakehouse and settled down to sleep. The collie said he would call them as soon as it was dark. They would only have 5 miles to go to another bakery, but he felt that they should get the journey over early, as he heard that there might be snow. But there may be cars on the road until late, so it is Christmas Eve and a Sunday, he told them. So you must go by the fields, and I shall escort you. Rest well now. Poor Mrs. When she awoke in the late afternoon and looked around her, she dissolved into sooty tears. I can't tell one pup from another now they're all black, she moaned. But she soon found that she could, although she could never have explained how she managed it. Another meal had been organised, but it was not all that it could have been wished for, because the butcher had meanly locked up his shop. This clears the bakery out, said the collie, carrying in the last stale loaf. But there will be a good supper waiting for you, and the journey oughtn't to take more than 3 or 4 hours. Then he went off to see if there was any news coming in by the twilight barking. After half an hour or so, Pongo began to feel anxious. It was quite dark and they ought to be off. What was delaying the collie? Listen, said the missus suddenly. Very, very faintly, they could hear the collie barking. He was calling Pongo's name again and again. Pongo and Mrs. ran out to the bakehouse, the little yard at the back. Now they could hear the collie more clearly. But he was obviously some way off. Pongo barked in answer to him, then swiftly the collie told them what had happened. He was locked in a house across the green with no hope of getting out. The postmistress had promised to look after him while the baker was away for Christmas. She decided it was too cold a night for a dog to be out and hauled him in, and then she'd gone out for the evening. He had tried every door and every window but could undo none of them. It was impossible for him to escort the Dalmatians as he had promised. "But you can't miss your way, Pongo," he barked. "Out over the fields at the back of the bakehouse and straight on for 5 miles. Pongo told him not to worry, but the poor collie was most unhappy. "Here I am, locked in with a warm fire and a good supper and powerless to help you." Both Pongo and Mrs. told him to eat the supper, enjoy the fire, and thanked him for all he'd done. "And now off we go," said Pongo, bringing the pups down to the bakehouse. "And no straggling, because it would be very easy to lose a black pup on a dark night." But it was not really a very dark night, for already the moon was rising and the stars were out. There was one specially large, bright star. "The collie said straight ahead, and that star is straight ahead," said Pongo, "so we will steer by it." He was thankful that they were going by way of the fields and not by the road, for he remembered that Cruella had told the Baden brothers she would come down tomorrow night to count the bodies. Now it was tomorrow night. Their way led through some grassy meadows over which the cad-pig's cart trundled smoothly. At every hedge and ditch Pongo passed and counted the pups to see that none had strayed, and Mrs. changed the pups who drew the cart and the pups who rested in it. Already even the smallest of the puppies were getting hardier. Even the cad-pig got out of the cart and walked 3 fields before getting in again. "Soon we shall be able to do 10 miles a day," said Pongo. They had travelled about 3 miles when the first disaster of the night happened. There was a sudden bump and a wild squeal from the cad-pig. A wheel had come off the little blue cart. Pongo saw at once that the cart could be mended. A wooden peg which fixed the hub of the wheel to the axle had come out. But could he ever, using his teeth, put the peg back? He tried and failed. Could the cad-pig manage without the cart? He whispered to Mrs. Mrs. shook her head. Walking 3 fields had been enough for her smallest daughter, and her other daughters couldn't walk more than a mile without a rest. "Then mend the cart I must," said Pongo, "and you must help me by holding the wheel in position." They tried and tried without success. Then, when they were resting for a moment, Mrs. noticed that many of the pups were shivering. "They had better keep warm by running races," said Pongo. "That would tire them," said Mrs. "Couldn't they all go over to that barn over there?" They could just see a big tiled roof 2 short fields away, not very clearly because the moon was behind the clouds. It was this lack of light which made it so hard to mend the cart. "That's a good idea," said Pongo, "and when the cart's mended we can bring it along and call for them all." Mrs. said the cad-pig had better stay in the cart and keep warm in the hay. But the cad-pig wanted to go with the others and see the barn. She felt sure she could walk 2 short fields, so Mrs. let her go. 2 strong pups, the right size to draw the cart, stayed behind. They said they didn't mind the cold. So 95 pups, led by Lieutenant Lucky, set off briskly for the barn. But when they got there, it did not look like a barn at the sheepdog's farm. It was built of grey stone and had long windows, some which had coloured glass in them, and at one end was a tower. "Why, there is a folly," said the cad-pig, remembering the tower at the Folly in Hell Hall. Lucky was looking for a door, but when he found one, it was firmly shut. He told the pups to wait for him while he went around the building looking for some other way in. The cad-pig did not wait. "Come on," she said to her devoted brother Patch. "I want to look at that folly." And when they got to the tower, they saw a narrow door which was not quite closed. It was too heavy for them to push, but they could just squeeze through. Inside this tower was nothing like the one at Hell Hall, and it opened into the grey stone building. "No hay in this barn," said the cad-pig. She'd counted on the hay for warmth, but they soon found that she was warm enough without it, for there was a big stove alight. It had a long iron pipe for a chimney that went right through the raftered ceilings. The moon was out now, and its light was streaming in through the tall windows, so that the clear glass made silver patterns on the stone floor, and the coloured glass made blue, gold and rose patterns. The cad-pig patted one of the coloured patterns with a delicate paw. "I love this barn," she said. Patch said, "I don't think it's a barn," but he liked it as much as the cad-pig did. They wandered around, and suddenly they made a discovery. Whatever this mysterious place was, it was certainly intended for puppies, for in front of every seat, and there were many seats, was a puppy-sized dog bed, padded and most comfortable. "Why, "It's just meant for us all to sleep in," said Cadpig. "I'll tell the other pups," said Patch, starting for the door. A glad cry from the Cadpig called him back. Look, television!" But it was not like the television at Hell Hall. It was much larger, and the figures on the screen did not move or speak. Indeed, it was not a screen. The figures were really there, on a low platform, humans and animals, most lifelike, although smaller than in real life. They were in a stable, above which was one bright star. "Look at the little humans kneeling," said Patch. "And there's a kind of a cow," said the Cadpig, remembering the cows at the farm who had given all the pups milk. "And a kind of a horse," said Patch, remembering the helpful horse who had helped them all into the field. "No dogs," said the Cadpig. "What a pity. But I like it much better than ordinary television, only I don't know why." Then they heard Lucky and the others, who had found their way in. Soon every pup was curled up on a comfortable dog bed and fast asleep, except for the Cadpig. She had dragged along one of the dog beds by its most convenient little carpet ear and was sitting on it, wide awake, gazing and gazing at this new and far more beautiful television. Once the moon came out from behind the clouds, Pongo managed to mend the wheel. The feeling of satisfaction when the peg slipped into place. Mrs. too felt proud. Had she not held the wheel? She, a dog who never understood machinery? Quickly, the two waiting pups seized the crossbar in their mouths, and then off they all went to the barn. But as they drew nearer, Pongo saw this was no barn. "Surely they can't have gone in there," he said to Mrs. "Why not, when they're cold?" said Mrs. "And they're far too young to know they would not be welcome." Pongo and Mrs. both knew that humans did not like dogs to go into buildings which had towers and tall, narrow windows. They had no idea why, and had first been a little hurt when they were told firmly to wait outside. But Mrs. Dearly had once said, "We would love you to come in if it was allowed. And I would go in far oftener if you could." So it was obvious one of those mysterious things such as no one, not even humans, ever being allowed to walk on certain parts of the grass in Regent's Park. "We must get them out quickly," said Pongo, "and go on with our journey." They soon found the door in the tower, which the biggest pups had pushed wide open because Mrs. had always been left outside. She disliked these curious buildings with towers and high windows, but the minute she got inside, she changed her mind. This was a wonderful place, so peaceful and somehow so welcoming. "But where are the pups?" she said, peering all around. She saw lots of black patches on the moonlit floor, but had quite forgotten that all the pups were now black. Then she remembered, and as she drew nearer to the sleeping pups, tears sprang to her eyes. Look at all the puppy beds," she cried. "What good people must live here." "It can't be the kind of place I thought it was," said Pongo. He was about to wake the puppies when Mrs. stopped him. "Let me sit by the stove for a little while," she said. "Not too long, my dear," said Pongo. He need not have worried. Mrs. only sat still for a few minutes. Then she got up, shook herself, and said brightly, "Let us start now. Things are going to be all right." An hour or so later, just before the evening service, the verger said to the vicar, "I think there must be something wrong with the stove, sir." On every hassock he had found a small, circular patch of soot. That is my favourite chapter of all times from 101 Dalmatians. I hope you liked it as much as I did. Now I want you to clean teeth, wash hands, into bed, snuggle up, and give yourself a great big huge cuddle, because we're getting near the end. Tomorrow night, miracle needed. Oh my goodness. Sleep well. Night night.